Good morning. Good morning, my friends. It is Kevin at 7. Welcome to this beautiful Monday. So we are going to go dark today. Just letting you know, we're not going to be, well, we may have some fun, but we're going to be talking about something that is not real estate related, at least not directly. But I think it's very related to how we relate to people around us and so forth. But I'm just so impacted by what has happened in the school shootings over the last few months that I'm like, you know what? I got to start talking about it. And I think it's a conversation we need to have beyond the news and the media and actually start talking about what can we do, because I'm going to tell you right now, legislation is not going to change it. And all the conversation about gun control and all of that is not going to solve the problem, period. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Kevin at 7 on this beautiful Monday morning. Happy Momentum Monday. So it's kind of heavy. This is kind of a heavy conversation. No, it's heavy. I know it's a heavy way to start the morning. Good morning, Kathleen. But I want you to think about how this shows up in your business and in our society and our culture, because when we understand the shift that's got to be required to stop school shootings, I'm going to tell you, your business will get better. Just understanding this. I know this kind of sounds crazy, but stay with me and you'll see what I'm talking about. Good morning, Roseanne from Boca Raton, Karsla from Vegas. Good morning, Tanika from Maryland, Jack from Arlington, Virginia. Good morning, Deborah from Richmond, Kentucky, Kathleen from Riverside, California. As you come on, make sure you give the post a thumbs up. Let's see some hearts today, because we need a lot of heart right now. It looks to me like, and I don't really spend much time watching the news. Hey, Tom, I'd mostly get it online. I'll avoid it as much as I can. Hey, Tom from Gulf Breeze, Florida. Good to see you this morning. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Tanika. Thanks for the hearts, guys, coming across the screen. But it seems to me like that there has been a lot less talk. Hey, Joe. Hey, Tammy from Troy, Michigan. Joe from Illinois. Good morning, everybody. As you come on, give the post a thumbs up. Tell us where you are. If you'll post that on the comments or on the chat here on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, good to see all of you this morning. It seems to me like there's not been near as much conversation about this shooting as there have been about the previous shootings. Which disturbs me. It disturbs me because, like, news makes the headlines because people will watch it. We're attracted to it. We're drawn to it. We can't stop watching it. Hey, Jennifer from Kendallville. Good morning. And I'm missing a lot of you. Hey, Paul Murphy from Surf City, USA. I think I know where that is, but I don't think most people know where that is. Hey, Kim from Charleston, South Carolina. Good morning. Paul Murphy, there's a reason they call TV content programming. You know, Paul, you just hit something really, really heavy. So I want to talk about how do we stop it? And the reason it's an important conversation for us to have as real estate, in the real estate space and for real estate agents, is because the very things that cause school shootings are the very same things in a way that can cause real estate agents to have bad reputation. And so I don't want to over dramatize the connection here. But I think this is something we need to understand about how people work and about how our culture is going, and the direction of a culture has a whole lot to say about how we do business. And so I want to start by talking about the Gallup polls. That Gallup has been doing polls, the Gallup company that does the Gallup poll. Gallup polls have been going on since the early 1970s. And one of the biggest dramatic changes to me that I have seen in Gallup surveys is when they ask the question, do you trust your neighbor? And in 1971, the first time they asked that question, do you trust your neighbor? 2/3 of Americans said, yes, I trust my neighbors. Good morning, Sean from Tampa, Annette from Long Island. So in the 1970s, in general, we trusted our neighbors. We're talking about the people that live next door to you, the people that live across the street behind you. Do you trust your neighbors? 2/3 of Americans says, yes, I trust my neighbors, which basically spoke to a culture in which we believed that people that were around us, whether we knew them or not, we could count on them. We could trust them. We felt safe with those people around us. Now you go back into the pioneer days, And if you were in the same culture, in other words, if you were a settler, the one thing you felt pretty safe about was that if anything went wrong, you could count on each other. And when you talk about the way that the pioneers settled, when they would come across in caravans, everybody was helping everybody else, and that was just the way it went. And it was a very community type culture, as opposed to a tribal culture that says, I protect my own and everybody else is the enemy. And if I don't know you, you could be an enemy. And so I got to watch my back. And that happens in a tribal culture. A lot of the Native American tribes had that very tribal culture. And if it was you were in their tribe, they would do anything to protect you. But if you were outside the tribe, you were an enemy. And you might kill me and I might kill you if the opportunity presents itself. Hey, Max from Champaign, good morning. For all of you joining us, we're glad to have you on this morning. So that tribal culture means we don't trust each other when we don't know you. Now, you're a real estate agent. Have you found, if for those of you that have been in a while, have you found it harder to get people to trust you today than it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago? That's a question. Have you found it harder to get people to trust you today than it was even 5 years ago? Are people more skeptical? Are people more suspicious of your motivation, that you're just out to get a commission check? You're just out to take advantage of them? Yeah, you've seen that. Let me see some thumbs up if you guys have seen that change happening over the last few years. America is getting less trusting. Now, what causes that? What causes that? And I am going to tell you this is what causes it. The way we interact with each other and the influence of what we put into our brain. So I'm going to make the case here. I'm going to make the case here for how to stop school shootings, but I'm also going to connect it very carefully to shady folks. Yeah, look, are people more shady than they were 5 years ago? And I'm going to contend that probably not dramatically, but are people are people more likely to think you may be a shady person? And that's what I believe has been a major shift in our culture. And that is, we don't trust each other. We're more skeptical. We're more cynical. We're more guarded. And that is happening all over our culture. All right. Here's how you stop school shootings. Okay. By the way, if this concerns you, and I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching this, because it tells me it's a little bit, it tells me you're interested in this. If you believe this matters, and you believe this is a conversation that we should all be having about how do you stop school shootings? How do you stop school violence? Let me see some thumbs up. I want to just make sure I'm having a conversation that you guys are interested in. And I'm going to have the conversation because I think it needs to be heard. And if you think other people need to hear it, I hope you'll share this with them. So here we go. The number one way you stop school shootings is moral anchors. Moral anchors. America has lost and is losing its moral anchoring in one. And I'll just give you the one thing that affects shooting, that causes shootings to happen. And that is what is the morality that would keep somebody from hurting someone else? What is the morality, the moral value, the moral anchors that would stop one human being from attacking another human being? And that, my friend, is what has been destroyed. And I wouldn't say destroyed, but it's what has been corroded, attacked, and in a lot of cases just not. In young people, it has not been planted, and that is they don't have a strong moral anchors. Now, what are strong moral anchors? Moral anchors are respect, kindness, love. How about that? If you guys believe these are strong, important moral anchors, that every human being should have a general respect for other people, a way of treating other people, that you are kind to others no matter what, you're respectful even if you disagree with somebody, even if you don't like somebody. And number three, the third moral anchor that we do not have in America is love your enemies. This changes the world. Love your enemies. Love your enemies. Now, that does not mean you have to want to hang out with them. Doesn't mean being gullible. It doesn't mean being naive. It doesn't mean being stupid. But it simply means people matter. Human beings and lives matter. That there is something sacred about life. There is something sacred about humanity. And that other people, even if you don't like them, disagree with them, even if they are your enemy, respect and love should still be the rule. That should still be the morality. And that is why that for a lot of time in our history, you can have a disagreement with somebody and disagree with somebody and still have dinner with them. Still get along with them. Maybe even if you didn't want to have dinner, you could still have a conversation with them and be civil about it. And now we are, because of some major changes in our culture, I think fed by the media and fed by a, how do I say this? Well, there is a hatred. There is a seed of hatred and poison that is filling the air of public discourse. Yes, if you understand what I'm saying, if you're sensing and seeing what I'm seeing, let me see some reaction here. Let me see some thumbs up. That the discourse in America, especially through the last political campaign, and now it has carried over into beyond campaigning now, it's just a way of public discourse, there is this massive disconnect between people that you do not see eye to eye with, or that you're not on your side. So now it's like, okay, if you don't agree with me, you're now the enemy. If you don't agree with me, you're now the enemy. And what does that mean? Well, if you're the enemy, it means you don't deserve respect. It means I can attack you. I can slander you. I can hate you. I can attack you verbally. Granted, now it's verbal. We can pretend like we can pretend like in effigy, like we beheaded somebody or we hurt somebody, and we can do it on a video. We can, act out. You just don't do the real thing. And here you have young people growing up being exposed to this, and they don't see they don't see the disconnect between acting out and doing the real thing. What they see is parents hating on other parents, parents hating on other people that they disagree with. They see people on television, celebrities hating on other people. And then each person who hates, they have their own little rules about what you can do when you hate somebody. You can say this about them, you can call this about them, as long as they're that way. But if somebody else says that same thing about them, oh, that's not okay. That person's an animal. That person's horrible. That person's, that's just unthinkable. And so we put these rules on ourselves about how we can hate, how we can attack. And I'm telling you, I am seeing in our culture, in our public discourse, just the conversations in public, on television, on the media, on YouTube, on Facebook, there is this sense of you can attack your enemies and you can hate them. You can have disgust for them. You're like, well, I don't hate them. I'm disgusted by them. You tell me what's the difference. You tell me what is the difference between loathing somebody and hating someone, besides saying, well, I'm disgusted by somebody and hating somebody. What is the difference? There is no difference, because it all plays out in the way you treat other people. And now we're doing it in ways that we consider to be socially acceptable. We do it in ways that we consider, okay, I'll do that. I do that, but I don't do that. I wouldn't actually kill them. I wouldn't actually attack them. Wait. You've been attacking them with your words. You've been attacking them in your conversation. What is the difference between whether you can attack somebody with words and attack somebody with a fist or a club or a gun? What's the difference? Just a couple of steps. Just the amount of blood on it. Because see, our young people are exposed to hatred. And now you're trying to tell them, well, you can hate, but that means you can do this, but you can't do this. If they come up to you and that you can punch them in the face, but don't take a gun, that would be too much. We have lost our moral anchors. Now, I'm going to tell you that if we're going to ever turn this around, it is not going to be legislation. And I'm going to tell you the problem is not guns. Never has been the problem, never will be the problem. Guns are not the problem. Gun control is not the solution. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have laws about guns. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying that is not going to solve and turn the direction we are going as a culture, as a civilization. And here's what else is not the solution. So legislation is not the solution. Guns are not the solution. Metal detectors are not the solution. Now, should we do all of that? Oh, yeah. I mean, right now, I believe that there should be one, if I was looking at it, I'd be going like, there should be one entrance into every public school, and there should be one public school entrance, and they should have metal detectors. And you got to do that because you have to protect the kids. And hatred is not easy to turn around. So legislation is not going to fix it. Washington is not going to solve our problems, my friends. Let me tell you something else. It is not. That is not the cause, not the problem, and that is mental illness. Now, I'm not minimizing the significance of mental illness, and I'm not saying that is not sometimes a problem. But most of the violence that is happening in our world, and by the way, while you're hearing about, the headlines make it because one guy killed 10 people in one day, that makes the headlines. But all the onesies and twosies that are happening day in and day out all over our world, all over America, you're not hearing about them in the news because they don't make the news. In our inner cities, gang violence, just unbelievably rampant. And what is the cause of that? It is not mental illness. And so the issue is a moral issue, not a mental issue. Because when a human being has a moral anchoring that says human life matters, people matter, people are important, you love people even if you don't like people, even if you disagree with them, even if they're your enemy, you still love them, you still respect them. So the solution is moral anchors, and we need to get serious about instilling into our children a moral compass, not mental health. Now, granted, mental health is definitely an issue. I'm not saying it's not an issue, but somebody can be totally morally fit or mentally fit. And if they do not have a moral compass, they can still be a threat to society. They can still pull a trigger. They can still stab. They can still kill, and they will. There's nothing mentally wrong with them. They are morally without a compass. Life of other people don't matter. So how are we training our children? And look, you got to be teaching, you got to be talking about this to your kids, to your grandkids, having these conversations. Now, that's first. I'm going to tell you the second thing. How do you instill moral anchoring in children? So number one is moral anchors. That's the first way you stop school shootings. Number two is time. Time. And here's the principle. The greatest influence in every child's life is the ones they spend the most time with. All right? The greatest influence is the ones they spend the most time with. The more time spent with somebody, the more influence and impact that has in their life. You guys follow what I'm saying? Okay? It's time. It is who's spending time with these people, these kids that are coming out and going crazy and pulling guns and doing all this stuff. Who are they spending more time with than anyone else? So here's the deal. We've always talked about the power of association. And when kids get into trouble, it's when they're hanging out with the wrong crowd, right? They're hanging out with the wrong crowd. That's what I heard all my life growing up. If you get in with the wrong crowd, you're going to do wrong things. You start shoplifting, you start, taking drugs, drinking, immoral activities. And now where it comes down to shootings and stuff like this, violence, you hang out with the wrong people, you're going to get the wrong influence. Okay. Well, that used to be the people you hung out with. Now you can hang out with the wrong crowd, and the wrong crowd can be video games. It can be YouTube. It can be social media. See, a kid can be totally a loner now. And used to, a kid, if they were a loner, they went out and hung out by themselves. And where do they tend to do that? They tended to do it in nature. And now they hang out by themselves and they watch videos. And their influence, they're spending time with other influencers, other people who are having some input into their brain. And it can be how to kill people. It can be full of hatred and contempt for humanity. And that's where they're spending their time. If you don't know where your child is spending most of their time, and when they're in their room, you don't know what they're putting in their brain, my friend, their moral compass is being set according to the time they are spending with those things, whether it's other kids, whether it is videos, video games, whatever it is, that is what is shaping the values of our young people. And it's what shaped your moral values. Where did you spend your time? Who'd you spend your time with? So the solution is for parents, for adults, is where you spend your time with them. If you want to change your kid's moral compass, you got to spend time with them. Because the one that spends the most time with them has the greatest influence. And you cannot, because I'm your dad, you do not have influence because you have a relationship as a dad. You have influence and authority because you spend the time with them. And then when you're not with them, you got to be giving them some serious moral anchoring so that they have some filters of what they put into their brain. Because it is more and more difficult. Used to, when I was a kid, if my dad came and searched my room, he could find if there was a dirty magazine, right? Back when I was a kid, parents could come in, they could search it, and they could know what you have in your room that is putting stuff into your brain. But today, what can they do to control it? Because now you can put on controllers on, like moral controllers on internet browsers and all that kind of stuff. But your kids know more about technology than you do. That's huge. So it's only time is going to be the solution. And that is critical. And it's got to be time where there is a moral compassing. There is moral training where you're teaching your kids the values of people matter, love your neighbors, love your enemies. Now, something that somebody else just said, Kathleen just said, lead them by example. The most powerful training, the most powerful anchoring is your example. Do you model what you tell them to do? When you come home and you are railing on your boss, you are railing on somebody else, and you're hating on somebody else, you're hating on some celebrity or some public figure, and you're hating on them with your words, all your kids go like, oh, hate's okay. And then they're going to act that out in the way that seems best to them, whether it's with words or fists or guns. Locking up your guns is not the solution. Now, if you have kids, you have guns, you should lock them up. But that's for safety, not for, that is not a substitute for moral anchoring and spending time with them and training them and teaching them and giving them values. Last thing that I'm going to say is you got to know your kids. You have to know them. Everybody was shocked with this. We've seen shootings in the past where they were like all the red flags were there, and the mom had, the parents were constantly calling the cops. I mean, they called 911. There was all the red flags. The parents knew their kids were in trouble. But you have one like this where like nobody seemed to know. There seemed to be no red flags. Everybody's like in shock. What happened? Well, somebody was not paying attention to what's going on in this kid's heart. Somebody wasn't close enough. You got to know your relationships, know the people in your life. And in this case, we're talking primarily about your children. And all this starts, my friends, when they're 2 years old, when they're 1 year old. This starts when they're babies. This does not start when they turn 13 or 16 or 17 or 18. All of a sudden, all right, we need to have a talk about morals. We need to have a talk about guns. Now, this is stuff that you're training them day in and day out. If the moral anchoring is there, if the values are there, if the relationship is there, if the trust is there, if they respect you because you've taught them the power of respect, you treat them with respect, you treat other people with respect. And when you tell them to respect other people, they get it because they're going like, oh, just do what you do. That's exactly right. But whenever you teach them to respect somebody and don't, you should not say that stuff. And they go like, well, you say it all the time. And guys, how do you stop school shootings? We got a lot of work to do. And we've got to stop looking to government, stop looking to the authorities as the solution to this problem. This is a humanity problem. This is a family problem. This is a culture problem. It's a civilization problem. This is not a government problem. It's not a law enforcement issue. Now, we have law enforcement to protect us because things have gone wrong. So I'm all for that. I'm not, again, this is not about, that's not important and we shouldn't have it. I believe we should have metal detectors and one entrance into schools. I believe there should be armed security at every public school. I believe that. I think just because of where we are, that you've got to do that to protect. But that is not the solution. That is a Band-Aid. Okay, you guys understand the difference? I mean, we're talking about, that is a Band-Aid from the cuts. When you're cutting yourself and putting Band-Aids on it, look, the Band-Aid is not the solution. Stop cutting yourself. That's the solution. You got to deal with the problem, not the effect of the problem. And our government comes in and they can deal with a little bit of the effect and they can come in and try to do all that. But the solution to this is going to be at a human level. It's going to be us as individuals. You got to change the discourse, and you got to have these conversations with people in your world. And when you see a friend of yours whose child, and they're going like, I don't know what to do about Tommy. He's hanging out with the wrong crowd. Well, you better do something, and you got to start giving them help. Okay, and this right here, they've got to have moral compass, moral anchoring. They've got to have time, and you got to get to know your kids so that you can have influence in your kids. And if there's and you got to be modeling all of this. If you're not, we're in trouble. It ain't going to get better. It's not going to get better because we have more laws. It's not going to get better because we have more cops. Okay, we need more of all that, but that is not the solution. That is just more Band-Aids. If you guys are feeling it, let me see some thumbs up. I'm going to get you guys back to work. Look, here's the deal. All of this affects the way human people discourse with one another. People connect with each other, and the more distrusting we are of other people. Now, I go into a restaurant and I will literally not sit with my back to the door. Why? Because if somebody comes in with a gun, I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what to do, and I'm watching. I'm prepared for it. It's not fun. It's not like, well, this is the solution. No, this is for survival. But we got to do work, and that's why I got to talk about it. And I got a voice, and I got people like you guys that'll listen to me. So I'm going to talk about it. And that's your responsibility to start talking to the people that you know. And whenever they go like, they start railing with hatred on somebody's response, or like they're blaming it on NRA, or they're blaming it on this, or they're blaming it on that. Excuse me. Your attitude is exactly what that kid had the same attitude you have, just without the moral anchor. Starts here before it ever goes here. So let's get this going. Let's change the world. Starts with you, starts with people you know and you can influence. Starts with your kids, your grandkids, your friends. Let's have some conversations and stop going. Don't go tribal. Don't go distrust. Don't love your enemies. This is a problem we all have together. It's a problem we're going to have to solve it together. All right, guys, now go out and win today. To go out and win. I promise tomorrow we'll have a fun conversation, okay? But I had to talk. This has been weighing on me for a long, long time, and I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation. But no, you don't want to have these conversations with your kids either. You got to have them. So we're gonna have them. And so I love you guys. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for the hearts. Share this if it helps. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Follow me. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. For Kevin at 7.